My family used my credit card for a $30,000 vacation without telling me. I waited until they were mid-flight, then canceled every card, every booking, every reservation. They landed to nothing. You know what's beautiful about being a senior fraud investigator for Austin Financial Group? You develop certain skills: pattern recognition, forensic accounting, the ability to trace financial irregularities across multiple accounts and jurisdictions. Most importantly, you learn exactly how to destroy someone's financial life with surgical precision when they cross the wrong person. My name is Jessica Blake, and 4 weeks ago, I discovered that my family had made the catastrophic mistake of stealing from someone whose entire career revolves around catching financial criminals and making their lives a living hell. I was in my downtown Austin office reviewing a $2.3 million embezzlement case for a corporate client when my phone buzzed with a fraud alert. Chase Bank Security. Unusual activity detected on account ending in 4721. Amount $8,500. Location Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. My blood went cold. I wasn't in Mexico. I was sitting in my office wearing a $300 blazer I'd bought on sale, drinking gas station coffee and working through lunch like I had every day for the past 6 months. I called the fraud department immediately, and what Janet from customer service told me made my forensic investigator brain start connecting dots I really didn't want to connect. 1. We show charges at the Casa Magna Marriott Resort, Blue Marlin Adventures, Sunset Terrace Restaurant, and Sensory Oasis Spa, she said in her professional Dallas accent, all within the past 48 hours. The cards were used by individuals with authorized access to your accounts. Authorized access. That phrase hit me like a freight train carrying a cargo load of family betrayal. 18 months ago, during my father Robert's emergency surgery, I'd added my parents and siblings, Dylan and Kimberly, to my credit accounts. Dad needed a cardiac procedure. Insurance was being difficult about pre-authorization, and my family was panicking about medical bills they couldn't afford. So I did what I'd always done since becoming successful. I fixed their problem. I opened my financial resources to them, thinking it was temporary, thinking family meant something more than it actually did. I should have known better, given that my job is literally catching people who exploit trust for financial gain. Janet, I need you to read me every single transaction from the past week, I said, pulling up my laptop and opening a new forensic analysis spreadsheet. When you've spent 8 years investigating financial crimes, you automatically start documenting evidence. The list she read made my stomach drop. 5 round-trip tickets to Cabo San Lucas at $800 each, luxury rental car for a week, premium ocean view suites at a 5-star resort, deep-sea fishing excursions, spa treatments, fine dining, shopping sprees at high-end boutiques. They weren't just taking a vacation on my credit cards. They were living like millionaires while I ate peanut butter crackers at my desk and worked 60-hour weeks. Tyler, my cousin, had somehow joined them on this stolen vacation. The charges showed 6 people total, which meant they'd planned and coordinated this theft as a family unit. In my professional experience, financial crimes involving multiple co-conspirators usually indicate systematic exploitation rather than opportunistic theft. The total so far was $31,500 across 4 different credit accounts, including my business line of credit that was supposed to be reserved for work expenses. They'd been smart about spreading the charges to avoid triggering automated fraud alerts, but not smart enough to realize they were stealing from someone who specializes in tracing exactly these kinds of financial patterns. I hung up with Janet and immediately called my colleague Brandon Hayes, a former FBI financial crimes investigator who now works private sector. Brandon and I had collaborated on several corporate theft cases, and I trusted his judgment on criminal matters. "They stole $30,000 from you while you were working?" he said after I explained the situation. "Jessica, you know this is organized theft, right? Multiple cards, multiple conspirators, premeditation evident in the coordination. This isn't family drama. This is a felony." He was right, and my professional training kicked in. I spent the next hour documenting everything using the same forensic techniques I employed for corporate investigations. Screenshots of all charges, timestamps showing the coordination across multiple accounts, and most damning social media posts from Dylan and Kimberly showing them flaunting their luxury vacation for everyone to see. Dylan had posted photos from the resort pool with captions about living the dream in paradise. Kimberly shared Instagram stories from expensive restaurants, hashtagged with blessed and luxury lifestyle. The evidence was overwhelming. They weren't just stealing from me. They were documenting their theft like it was something to celebrate. The most revealing discovery came from analyzing the charge patterns. The first transaction had appeared 3 weeks ago, a small $250 travel agency fee that I dismissed as a routine service charge. Looking at the data forensically, I realized they'd been planning this theft for nearly a month, carefully timing it to coincide with my busiest work period when I was least likely to notice irregular spending. They'd researched the most expensive restaurants at the resort and made advance reservations, pre-booked spa treatments and excursions, even purchased travel insurance to protect their stolen vacation. The level of premeditation was staggering, and in Texas, premeditation elevates theft charges significantly. But here's what my family didn't understand about me. I don't just investigate financial crimes, I'm exceptionally good at it. My success rate for securing convictions in corporate theft cases is 97%. I have professional relationships with the best forensic accountants, criminal attorneys, and federal investigators in Texas. When someone steals from me, they're not just robbing a regular person. They're targeting someone with the exact skill set and resources to destroy them systematically. I called my attorney, Catherine Brennan, who specializes in high-stakes financial litigation. Catherine and I had worked together on several major corporate cases, and she understood both criminal and civil remedies for theft. Jessica, based on the amounts and evidence you've described, we're looking at multiple felony charges, she said after reviewing my documentation. Theft by credit card, conspiracy, possibly fraud if we can prove they made misrepresentations about authorization. The systematic nature of this makes it particularly serious. The potential sentences were sobering. In Texas, theft involving amounts over $30,000 qualifies as a first-degree felony, carrying 5 to 99 years in prison. The conspiracy charges could add additional time, especially given the coordination between multiple family members. What are my options? I asked, though I was already formulating my own strategic plan. Criminal charges, civil litigation for treble damages, or both, Catherine replied. Given your professional background and the evidence quality, this is actually an unusually strong case. They chose the wrong person to steal from. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of calling my family to confront them about the theft, I did what I do best. I started building an airtight case. I contacted Detective Maria Valdez from the Austin PD Financial Crimes Unit, someone I'd worked with on corporate investigations. "Let me understand this correctly," Detective Valdez said when I explained the situation. A family of financial criminals decided to steal from a senior fraud investigator who specializes in tracing and prosecuting exactly these types of crimes. When she put it that way, the irony was almost funny. Almost. "The evidence you've compiled is exceptional," she continued. "Most theft victims don't have documentation this comprehensive. We could probably secure arrest warrants by end of week." But I had a different plan, a more elegant plan. One that would let my family enjoy every moment of their stolen vacation, right up until the moment their world collapsed around them. I was going to let them finish their trip, let them post more social media evidence of their theft, let them accumulate even more charges and dig their legal graves even deeper. And then, at the perfect moment, I was going to activate every professional resource at my disposal to deliver consequences they could never have imagined. My phone buzzed with another fraud alert, another $3,000 in charges from Mexico. I smiled and saved the notification. Every additional dollar they stole was another year they'd spend in prison. They thought they were dealing with their successful but naive sister who worked too much to pay attention to her finances. They had no idea they were about to face someone who makes a living destroying people exactly like them. The next morning brought a text message from Tyler that wasn't meant for me. He'd accidentally included me in a group message intended for his girlfriend. These idiots think Jessica's too busy with work to notice the charges. By the time she figures it out, we'll be home and she'll just have to deal with it. She makes good money anyway. Reading those words was like finding the smoking gun in a criminal investigation. Tyler had just provided written evidence that they knew their actions constituted theft and were counting on my work schedule to avoid immediate consequences. In legal terms, this demonstrated clear criminal intent and consciousness of guilt. I screenshot the message and added it to my growing evidence file. My family had just handed me the proof I needed to pursue the most serious charges possible. That afternoon, I received a call from Miguel Herrera at the Casa Magna Resort. Miss Blake, I'm calling regarding your family's reservation. The credit cards we have on file are experiencing technical difficulties, and your family members have been unable to provide alternative payment methods. Technical difficulties. That was an interesting way to describe what was about to happen. Mr. Herrera, I said calmly, I need to inform you that those credit cards were used without my authorization. I recommend you contact local authorities about potential fraud, as I'll be filing criminal charges in the United States. The silence that followed was deafening. I see. That does complicate matters significantly. I imagine it does, I replied. You might want to secure their passports until this gets resolved. After hanging up, I called the credit card companies and reported every charge as unauthorized. Chase, American Express, Capital One, and my business account provider all initiated dispute procedures and froze the accounts immediately, which meant my family, currently on a luxury vacation in Mexico, had just lost access to the money they'd stolen from me. They were about to be stranded in a foreign country with no way to pay for hotels, meals, or flights home. My phone started ringing within an hour. First Dylan, then Kimberly, then my mother Patricia. I let every call go to voicemail, but I listened to each message carefully. They were masterpieces of escalating panic. Dylan's first message was dismissive. Hey Jess, there's some kind of banking error with the cards. Can you call Chase and get it sorted out? His second message, 2 hours later, was notably less confident. The hotel is saying the cards are declined and we can't check out tomorrow without settling the bill. This is getting serious. Kimberly's messages followed a similar progression from entitlement to desperation. Jessica, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to fix this banking problem immediately. We're stuck here without money for food. By evening, my mother Patricia called from what sounded like the hotel front desk, her voice shaking. Jessica, sweetheart, please call me back. The hotel manager says we might have to stay until this gets resolved, and we don't understand what's happening. We're your family. You can't abandon us in a foreign country. Abandon them. They'd abandoned me when they decided to steal $30,000 from someone who works 60-hour weeks and hasn't taken a vacation in 2 years. That evening, I met with my professional team to finalize our strategy. Catherine Brennan brought her associate, who specializes in victim restitution. Detective Valdez joined us along with a federal prosecutor, since the cross-border elements might elevate this to federal jurisdiction. The evidence is overwhelming, the federal prosecutor said after reviewing my documentation. Multiple conspirators, systematic planning, consciousness of guilt demonstrated in communications, and continued criminal activity even after initial theft. We could pursue RICO charges if there's evidence of ongoing financial exploitation patterns. RICO charges meant treating my family as an organized criminal enterprise. The potential sentences would be devastating, decades in federal prison for the primary conspirators. Have they done this before? Detective Valdez asked. I thought about all the times over the years when I'd helped with emergencies. Dylan's car repairs that he never paid back. Kimberly's security deposits for apartments she couldn't afford. my parents' various financial crises that somehow always became my responsibility to solve. Indeed. Probably, I admitted. I've been their financial safety net for years. Looking back, I think this vacation was just the biggest theft in an ongoing pattern. Then we build a comprehensive case, Catherine said, not just for this vacation, but for years of systematic financial exploitation. The civil damages alone could reach 6 figures. Monday morning brought news from Mexico. The hotel had contacted local authorities about my family's unpaid bills, and Mexican police were now involved. My family wasn't exactly in jail, but they were being detained at the resort pending resolution of the debt dispute. Detective Valdez called with updates. Mexican authorities have requested our documentation about the theft charges. They're treating this as an international fraud case now. Your family's situation just got significantly more complicated. That afternoon, my work phone rang with a call from someone identifying himself as James Patterson from the American consulate in Cabo San Lucas. Miss Blake, I'm calling about your family members who are currently being held at the Casa Magna Resort. The Mexican authorities have asked us to facilitate a resolution to their outstanding debt situation. Mr. Patterson, those charges were unauthorized. I've filed criminal complaints in Texas, and I won't be paying for expenses I didn't approve. I understand, but your family members are claiming this is a misunderstanding, that you had given them permission to use the cards for this vacation. Of course they were lying to the consulate. It's what criminals do when they get caught. Mr. Patterson, I have documented evidence that contradicts their claims. Text messages showing they knew I was unaware of their trip. Social media posts proving they planned this without my knowledge, and credit card statements showing charges began weeks before I knew about their vacation. If they had my permission, why would they hide the planning from me? The consul went quiet for a moment. Would you be willing to provide that documentation to assist in resolving this situation? I've already provided it to Austin PD and the District Attorney's Office as part of a criminal investigation. Your office is welcome to contact Detective Valdez for copies. I see. Well, that does change things significantly. If there's an active criminal investigation, the consulate's ability to intervene is quite limited. Good, I said firmly, because I'm not interested in intervention. I'm interested in justice. Over the next week, my family's situation deteriorated rapidly. The Mexican authorities had opened their own fraud investigation based on the conflicting stories about authorization. Dylan and Patricia were transferred to an actual detention facility while the legal matters were sorted out. Their attorney, some local lawyer they'd hired, was trying to argue that this was all a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion by technical banking errors. But Mexican authorities weren't buying it, especially after receiving copies of my evidence from the U.S. consulate. Catherine called with updates on our legal strategy. The district attorney's office is preparing to file enhanced charges, multiple counts of theft, conspiracy, fraud, and possibly racketeering if we can establish this was part of an ongoing pattern. We're looking at potential sentences of 15 to 20 years for the primary conspirators. What about civil recovery? I asked. Treble damages under Texas law, plus attorney fees, plus punitive damages for emotional distress. We could potentially recover $100,000 or more, depending on what other financial exploitation we can document. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. It was Tyler calling from San Antonio. He'd somehow managed to get home while the others remained detained in Mexico. Jessica, we need to talk. There are things about the situation you don't know. I met Tyler the next day at a coffee shop near UT campus. He looked nervous and exhausted, constantly checking his phone like he expected to be followed. I wasn't really part of the planning, he said immediately. Dylan told me you were paying for everyone as a family gift and that you were too busy with work to join us. Tyler, I saw your text message. You said I was too busy to notice the charges. That doesn't sound like someone who thought I'd given permission. He was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to cause family drama. I should have said something or refused to go. Is there something else you want to tell me? Tyler pulled out his phone. I have recordings, conversations between your mom and Dylan where they talk about using your cards without permission. I recorded them because I was getting suspicious and wanted to protect myself if things went wrong. The recordings Tyler played were damning. In one, I could hear Patricia and Dylan discussing the timing of charges to avoid triggering fraud alerts. In another, Kimberly talked about maximizing their spending before I noticed. Most damaging was Patricia saying, "Jessica works so hard, she deserves to pay for a nice family vacation even if she doesn't realize she's doing it." The casual entitlement in her voice was stunning. They'd convinced themselves that stealing from me was somehow doing me a favor. "Why are you giving me these recordings?" I asked. "Because what they did was wrong, and because I don't want to go to prison for crimes I didn't plan," Tyler said. "I was stupid and greedy, but I wasn't the mastermind. Your mom and Dylan were." I copied the recordings to my phone and shared them with Detective Valdez and Catherine immediately. Tyler's cooperation might not absolve him of wrongdoing, but it would significantly strengthen our case against the primary conspirators. 2 weeks later, news came from Mexico that Patricia and Dylan had been released from detention, but were required to surrender their passports and remain in Cabo San Lucas pending resolution of the criminal charges. They were trapped in a foreign country, facing both Mexican fraud charges and pending felony charges in Texas. The federal prosecutor called with significant news. "Based on the new evidence and Tyler's cooperation, we're upgrading the charges. Your family will be facing federal racketeering charges as an organized criminal enterprise. The systematic nature of the financial exploitation, combined with the conspiracy elements and cross-border criminal activity, meets the threshold for RICO prosecution." Federal RICO charges meant potential sentences of 20 years to life in federal prison. My family's decision to steal from me had just escalated into the kind of case that destroys lives permanently. A month later, Patricia and Dylan were extradited back to Texas and arrested on multiple federal charges. Kimberly, who had somehow managed to return earlier, was arrested at her apartment. The local news picked up the story. Local family charged in federal racketeering case for stealing from fraud investigator. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A family of financial criminals had targeted someone whose entire career involves catching and prosecuting financial criminals. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of systematic financial exploitation dating back 5 years. Tyler's recordings, my forensic documentation, social media posts, communications with Mexican authorities, and testimony from other family members who had witnessed their planning sessions. The most damaging moment came when prosecutors played a recording of Patricia and Dylan discussing their long-term plans for my money. Patricia could be heard saying, "Jessica barely pays attention to her finances because she's so focused on work. We could probably take $100,000 over the next few years if we're careful about timing." Dylan responded, "The key is making her feel guilty when she questions anything. She always chooses family peace over money, so we just make sure saying no makes her feel like a bad sister." Hearing them discuss manipulating my emotions as part of their criminal strategy was devastating, but it also validated every decision I'd made to pursue justice rather than family reconciliation. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all major charges. Patricia was convicted of racketeering, theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Dylan was convicted on all 15 counts. Kimberly was convicted on 8 of 10 charges. Judge Harrison scheduled sentencing for the following month. During the sentencing hearing, he addressed the defendants directly. "You exploited family relationships to commit systematic financial crimes over multiple years. Your actions represent a profound violation of trust that caused substantial financial and emotional harm to the victim. These sentences reflect both the seriousness of your crimes and the need to deter similar conduct." Patricia received 12 years in federal prison. Dylan received 15 years with the judge noting his leadership role and complete lack of remorse. Kimberly received 8 years, reduced to 6 due to her cooperation during the investigation. The financial restitution ordered by the court totaled $93,000, including the original theft, interest, penalties, and compensation for credit damage. My civil lawsuit resulted in additional emotional distress damages, bringing my total recovery to over $120,000. But the money was never really the point. The legal proceedings gave me something more valuable: validation that I deserved to be treated with respect by people who claimed to love me. 6 months after sentencing, I received a letter from Patricia in federal prison claiming to have found religion and wanting to apologize. The letter was filled with self-pity and subtle requests for me to advocate for early release. I read it once and threw it away. Real remorse would have included acknowledgement of the systematic nature of her crimes and recognition of the long-term damage caused. A year after the trial, Dylan's ex-girlfriend Lisa contacted me through social media. She'd started a support group for people whose family members had been victimized by financial abuse and wanted me to know that my case had inspired other victims to seek justice. "Your decision to press charges saved other people from being victimized," she wrote. "Dylan had been planning to ask you for business startup money after returning from Mexico. If you hadn't stopped him, he probably would have stolen even more." The perspective was enlightening. By holding my family accountable, I had potentially prevented future victims from being exploited by people who viewed relationships as opportunities for profit. Tyler completed his plea agreement and received probation with community service. He moved to Dallas and started working for a financial crime prevention nonprofit, using his experience to educate people about family financial abuse. His cooperation had been crucial to securing convictions, but I maintained no relationship with him beyond necessary legal proceedings. 2 years after the trial, I received notification that Kimberly was eligible for early release. The parole board requested victim input about whether I supported early release. I submitted a letter neither supporting nor opposing her release, but emphasizing that any early release should include strict financial monitoring and mandatory counseling for criminal thinking patterns. She was released after serving 4 years and found work as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned she was living in a halfway house and attempting to rebuild her life legitimately. I felt no obligation to reach out, but also no animosity toward her efforts to change. Patricia and Dylan remained in federal prison, with earliest possible release dates still years away. Both had burned bridges with non-criminal family members through years of financial manipulation and exploitation. 3 years after the trial, I reflected on how the experience had changed my understanding of family relationships. I'd learned that love without respect isn't really love, and that protecting yourself from exploitation isn't betraying family. It's honoring yourself. My career flourished during this period, partly because I was no longer distracted by constant family financial crises. Without the ongoing stress of being viewed as a source of income rather than a person, I could focus entirely on professional growth. I developed new relationships with people who respected my boundaries and valued my success without viewing it as an opportunity for exploitation. These friendships were based on mutual respect rather than calculations about financial benefit. The legal victory gave me more than financial recovery. It gave me confidence to trust my own judgment about relationships and maintain firm boundaries with people who tried to manipulate or exploit me. I no longer felt guilty about saying no to requests that made me uncomfortable. Looking back, I realized my family's theft had actually freed me from a lifetime of financial exploitation disguised as family bonds. By forcing me to confront the reality of our relationship dynamics, they had inadvertently given me clarity to build a life based on genuine connections rather than manipulative transactions. The credit cards they stole from were replaced and secured. The money they took was recovered with interest. But most importantly, the person they exploited no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood that real family relationships are built on mutual respect, not financial opportunity. My case became part of legal precedent for prosecuting family financial abuse. Law enforcement agencies now use it as a training example for recognizing and investigating systematic financial exploitation within families. Tyler's recordings became standard evidence of how financial abusers coordinate their activities and justify their crimes. 4 years after pressing charges, I could honestly say I regretted nothing about pursuing justice. The pain of losing family relationships had been intense, but temporary. The satisfaction of protecting myself and potentially other victims from ongoing exploitation was permanent. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be loved in ways that diminish your worth. My family had gambled that I would always choose peace over principle, forgiveness over accountability. They lost that gamble and spent years learning that some consequences can't be negotiated away, even by people who claim to love you.